Not every story worth telling starts with fireworks or tragedy. Sometimes it's just a boy, a dog, and a silence so thick you could slice it with a butter knife. That's how it was for me. He didn't bark, didn't growl, just sat behind that rusty kennel gate like he'd been waiting for the world to show up and prove him wrong. The world did not for a long time. Not until I stumbled in that day, half frozen and barely holding it together, looking for something I didn't even know I'd lost. The air in Willow Creek was cold enough to sting, but not quite ready to snow. Late October in a mountain town always feels like you're living in someone else's memory. You know what I mean? Gray skies, the pines standing guard up on the ridge, the whole place quietly waiting for winter. When you're 12 and your dad's gone, folks notice you for all the wrong reasons. I stood there at the entrance of the animal shelter, hands jammed so deep in my hoodie pockets I thought I'd poke through, breathing clouds into the warmth that smelled of bleach and dog fur. My mom, Hannah, stood beside me, tall, tired, kind in a way that felt far away lately. Double shifts as a nurse will do that. She said we were just looking, but we both knew that wasn't true. Darlene, this no-nonsense woman mopping the lobby, welcomed us in. She could have been anybody's Aunt Red sweatshirt, practical voice, warm eyes if you look close. "Don't let the smell scare you," she said, which was funny because it smelled less like animals and more like endings. Rows of kennels, the usual chaos. Dogs barking, tails thumping, hope and desperation bouncing off metal gates. I try not to see them, I really did until I got to the last one. He wasn't barking, wasn't begging, just sitting there, looking at me like he could see straight through the mess I'd become. Old German Shepherd, coat a patchwork of gray and cream, one amber eye, one cloudy. You could see the scars if you looked long enough, but mostly he looked like he'd already survived every storm a dog could face. I don't know why I asked about him. Maybe because he looked like he wouldn't ask anything back. Darlene told us, that one's different. Named Shadow, at least that's what's on the tag. No chip, no papers. Been here 2 months, brought in by a ranger. Nobody's come looking. And then I saw the tag, this old brass coin that said, if you found me, someone still believes I matter. That about knocked the wind out of me. Why would a dog nobody wanted still wear hope around his neck? Mom asked if I wanted to meet him. I nodded, and Darlene unlocked the gate. Shadow, he got up slow, joints stiff, dignity intact, walked straight to me like he decided before I did. I knelt and put my hand on his head, half expecting him to flinch, but he just leaned in, all warmth and weight. Something shifted in my chest, just a little, like maybe the thaw had started. We brought him home. The ride was silent except for the sound of his breathing. At the house, he didn't race in or sniff every corner, just walked through each room like he was checking if the place could hold him. He found Rusty's old bed, our dog who died 2 years ago, and curled up like he'd always belonged there. "You can have it," I whispered, though my throat was tight. Mom just watched from the kitchen, drying her hands, not saying anything. That night, Shadow didn't beg for scraps, didn't whine, just lay beside the table like peace itself. When Mom dropped garlic bread, he sniffed it and left it be. "He's polite," I said, and she smiled like she hadn't in months. I sat with him in the backyard that night. It had started to drizzle, the grass cold, the world spinning in gray. We just sat, boy and dog, quiet. Next morning, Shadow was already by the back door, waiting, not impatient. I took him for a walk, down the block, past Mrs. Donnelly's blue cardigan and hard-earned wisdom. "You be good to that one," she called. "He's seen things." Even the kids at school, yeah, they mocked me for walking a police reject, but Shadow didn't care, and after a while, I found I didn't either. One night I noticed something else on that brass tag. Turned it over, scrubbed it clean, and there it was, 144 Glen Hollow. An address. I couldn't get it out of my head. One morning, I told Mom I was heading out, didn't say where, in Shadow, and I walked out past the edges of town, onto the dirt road, up to a cabin old as the hills. The man who opened the door was bone-thin, flannel shirt, gray eyes that had seen too much. His name was George Whitman. The second he saw Shadow, he dropped to his knees. "Juno, is that you?" Shadow Juno pressed his head into the old man's chest, and just like that, the whole world held its breath. George told us about his daughter, Emma, who'd raised Juno. She had a heart condition, died too young. After that, George just couldn't care for the dog anymore. Left the gate open one morning, and Juno wandered off. If you found me, someone still believes I matter, the tag had said. Emma wrote that her hope outlasting her heart. George pressed an old letter into my hands, trembling. If he ever finds someone new, tell him he still matters. I didn't know how to answer, so I just nodded, and we walked home with a story that was no longer a mystery, but a memory handed down. Life didn't get easier overnight, but it changed. I brought Shadow to the library, where kids read to dogs, so they wouldn't be scared to speak out loud. There was Ava, tiny with pink glasses, whispering her way through Goodnight Moon's shadow, just sat, silent and still, his presence turning fear into courage. Mrs. Breener, the librarian, cried when she saw it. Whatever he's doing, don't stop. Mom noticed too. Said I seemed lighter, like I'd come back to myself. At parent night, I even spoke up first time since Dad's accident. Sometimes just sitting beside someone helps more than words, I told the class. Not sure if anyone believed it, but Mom squeezed my shoulder, and I knew she did. The story twisted again one snowy evening when the town honored therapy animals at Civic Hall. Shadow didn't need tricks or ribbons. His gift was stillness, listening. I stood up at that podium, my hands shaking, and said, he was rejected by the world, but he still believed someone would find him. Someone did. You don't have to talk loud to say something. Sometimes just being there is louder. The applause that followed was a wave I never saw coming. As winter melted into spring, Shadow slowed. One morning he didn't get up, just lay beneath the old maple tree, peaceful as a prayer. We buried him there, George by my side, Ava reading from her favorite book, Mrs. Breener leaving flowers, neighbors dropping by with tears and stories. If you found me, someone still believes I matter. And now so do they. Read the stone George carved for his grave. Time moved on, gentle and slow. Lucky came into our lives a clumsy, long-eared mutt who couldn't sit still if his life depended on it. He wasn't Shadow, but he didn't have to be. He listened in his own way, brought laughter back into the house. I realized sometimes miracles show up quiet, on forced silent pause, or in the courage to speak again. Shadow's gift wasn't what he did, but who he was. And that's the thing, you don't have to be loud to be heard. You don't have to be perfect to matter. And even when life leaves scars, you're still worthy. Just like someone saw a shadow and believed. So if this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a quiet reminder. Tell me where you're listening from, or drop your own story in the comments. Do you believe that being present is enough, that we all matter, even in silence? If you do, type them in, and let's keep the hope alive, one quiet miracle at a time.